Considering the video I made over a year ago on KZ, I never thought we'd be where we are today, but dare I say, we are here. So the KZ Ling Long is an IEM that costs $15, has a single 6mm dynamic driver, and is incredible for the price. I usually don't make videos like this, but after EQing to the KZ Ling Long and even just seeing the frequency response graph, I was just blown away for the price. Now, it does have issues, but they really can be excused when you consider, or they can be excused when you consider that it costs only $15. So, looking at the frequency response graph and basically telling you what I heard with my EQ, we can see that there is a great amount of sub-bass support, but it is slightly muddy, as you can see by the 300 hertz increase. It doesn't really sound like you're listening to a subwoofer like you are with the variations, since the separation between the mid-range and the bass is not clear enough. But it doesn't really come across that muddy since the sub-bass support is so strong. For example, it's barely any muddier than the Chew here, and it has so much more sub-bass support, which was a huge issue in the Chew. Moving on to the upper mids in treble, the upper mids are honestly excellent, maybe really not shouty at all, actually, just because the mud kind of masks any shout that would be present. The treble is slightly incorrect, so let me look at my notes here. So the treble is slightly bright in the lower to mid treble. You can hear this in songs like 1 to 10 by Twice and Call Me by Pixie. And like I said, the bass is slightly muddy. It's not subwoofer-like, and the worst example where I heard this was in I Knew You Were Trouble by Taylor Swift, where it is very obvious. You can clearly hear that her voice is being masked by the thumping bass. And I wish it was a little bit more separated, but in a passive design, you definitely need another driver for this. And the treble is slightly uneven. This is less clear in the graph where it's normalized for volume, but when you match it at around 6 kHz, you can see what I'm talking about. Since the treble is slightly boosted around 6 kHz compared to the variations, it might look like it has the same level of upper treble extension, but this is incorrect. When you match it at 6 kHz, you can clearly see the difference. The upper treble is lacking after 8 kHz, which is a similar problem to what the Con has. And that combined with the extra mud at around 300 Hz causes a slightly compressed soundstage compared to the variations, but we're talking about an IEM that costs so many times more and is maybe only like a few percent better than the KZ Ling Long. Even then, maybe some people would even prefer the KZ Ling Long in a blind test. These are really like splitting hair differences, but I'm just telling you that this $15 IEM is simply incredible for the price, and even this $520 IEM that is literally better than any IEM regardless of the price right now is barely any better than the Ling Long, even though it is better sounding, objectively and subjectively. A possible concern, though, is that because of the 6mm dynamic driver and the level of bass, it might distort, but I don't know. The Sennheiser IE600 has a similar level of bass and also has small drivers, so maybe they did something to prevent this from distorting, but I am surprised by the amount of deep bass output this has. It's really good. I highly recommend the KZ Ling Long to anyone who can't afford the Moondrop variations. Obviously, we have the Moondrop variations. There's no reason to buy the KZ Ling Long, but most people can't afford the Moondrop variations, unfortunately. And honestly, if you're looking for something in the budget range under $100, I think this is a great option. I think it's better in the upper mid-range than the QKZX HBB Con for sure. I don't think the bass is better, but I don't know, maybe against the Truth Ear Zero, it'll have better treble extension. I don't know, it's really splitting hairs, but under the like $400 price bracket, there's not really anything that definitively beats the KZ Ling Long. It's excellent in performance overall. I mean, like I said, I told you the reasons. The bass is slightly too muddy, and the upper treble, or just treble in general, is slightly uneven. And look at the difference between the Chew and the Ling Long, for example. The Ling Long has way better treble extension than the Chew. The Chew just drops off a cliff after 8 kHz, whereas the Ling Long actually has a pretty good level, and it even gets worse for the Chew when you match it at 6 kHz. We're talking about like 13 dB down in the upper treble. This is kind of ridiculous in comparison to the Ling Long, who is really, really, really good in performance. I mean, It's like twice as good as the Chew and upper treble, and only the variations like a $500 IEM is clearly beating this. And you can take the Quarks DSP, for example. It is quote-unquote tuned well, but it does have severe phase issues due to the DSP implementation that's not even the real tuning of the Quarks. You'll get clearer transients with the Ling Long, even though it'll be slightly muddier than the Quarks DSP. Honestly, the KZ Ling Long gets my strongest recommendation for the price. If you want something for this budget, I definitely recommend getting the KZ Ling Long. Anyways, that's it for me. I'll see you guys next time I'm out. I'd like to give a shout out to Felix, Mild Bill, Christopher Yu, the RFL Reaper, Tripped, Fofo, Castello4141, Straight Up Bemchech, Ninja Common 3, Vsauce 4, Wadiaker, and Snivry. I'd also like to give a shout out to Tripped once again, and Base Gamer. Thank you guys so much for supporting the channel. I really appreciate it. If anyone else also wants to support the channel, please be sure to join the Discord membership, the YouTube membership, or the Patreon.